And welcome back to Real Side Radio. We're in our third and final hour here tonight on Real Side Radio on 70 stations across the fruited plain on the GCN and Salem Radio Network. I'm Dave Sussman, your host, and you can find me at Whiskey Politics and also at David Sussman on Twitter. And in that last segment, we were just talking about how, incredible story here, but we're now starting to see this repeated where YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki stated that anything that would contradict the World Health Organization's recommendations would be removed from the platform. What we're seeing happening right now is that those on the left in the media titans, social media titans, mainstream media, and academia are using COVID-19 to, in essence, push their values upon all Americans, whether all Americans want those values or not. And to talk about this and how it's impacting everybody across the globe right now is Brian Martinez, who is with Honey Badger Radio. And you can find Brian Martinez. Brian, you are at honeybadgerradio.com. Is that correct?
That is correct. Well, it's actually honeybadgerbrigade.com.
Brigade.com.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is Honey Badger Radio or Badger Live Streams. We have two channels, one where we put sort of scripted, pre-recorded and edited content, that's Honey Badger Radio, and one where we do live shows where we interact with the audience, and it's all in real time, and that's Badger Live Streams.
You got it. And it's a great show. I was fortunate and honored to be on his show last week. It's all good stuff, and they do long-form interviews and also have a Patreon account as well. But, we were talking earlier, Brian, and, we were talking about this push by the left and the leftist values, and you got this guy from Harvard that is now, in essence, trying in some way to put a presumptive ban on homeschooling. This is the thing that parents have control over right now, and they want to take that control away. What the heck is going on?
Yeah, well, this is just really the left is showing what it's really after, which is, I know it's not to fearmonger, but they are honestly after your kids. They want to indoctrinate your children. Public schools they're all but lost. I think it's something like 85% of instructors and schools all have a left-wing bias, and I'm talking a severe one. You can find article after article that shows that they're pushing these progressive values. So this is beyond sort of like regular mainstream liberalism. This isn't just like that. This is way past that. This is acceptance of all of these really divisive far left narratives. They push Marxism, they push feminism, like hardcore third wave feminism, ideas around white privilege, white supremacy, male privilege, and so on children. I mean, I'm talking grammar school kids. You can find this all over the place. So when this pandemic hit and we had to stay indoors and the schools closed, well, parents started taking things in their own hands. They were like, well, I still want my kid to get a good education. Some schools are doing classes online, or they're using, sort of like Zoom meetings or something. But some of the ones that have lower budgets, they can't. So the parents are like, well, I'll teach the kids myself. And there's this Harvard professor. Her name is Elizabeth Bartholet, and I talked about her on our news show, which we did yesterday. And she wants to ban homeschooling. She's trying to organize a summit. And this is Harvard, by the way. This isn't like some small city college or some, like the Evergreen College in Washington, where it's just like a bunch of minor nut jobs. We're talking about
Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, this is like an Ivy League school. And the thing is the Ivy League universities are actually some of the worst ones about this. They actually have the worst. So she's actually putting together a summit, homeschooling summit, with a bunch of other professors. So it's not just one person. Mm-hmm. And they're basically discussing ways in which they can curb people from homeschooling their kids, essentially to put a focus back on, put your children in our hands, trust us. We know what's best for them. We have it locked down. And, we talked about this on the show. And one of the things that you've noticed, and you've probably seen this yourself, these professors and leftists in general, they despise the idea of school choice. They're much against charter schools. They hate Catholic schools. they can't stand private schools. They want everything to be public. And I think the reason is because through public schooling, that's how they get their ideological, method of teaching pushed in. They
Right.
That's how they get it to the kids. And you can't, like, I mean, what are you going to do about that? It's like, it's public school. Like it's kind of like, it's the law. You have to go. And this is how they operate. It's always top down. It's always using force, and they want to teach kids the way they do. And so
in our last minute here before the first break here, tell me what the ultimate goal is of these people.
Well, they want, again, like I said, they want to condition your kids. They've been doing it for a long time. Look at the way that millennials vote. Look at what millennials think about ideas like socialism and feminism and equality and all that. If you look at the studies that have been done, there were, a large number of them are supporters of Bernie Sanders. They think that socialism is good. They think that it works. They think college should be free. These are the things that get taught in school. I know that you want to go to your break, but I was in college recently because I wanted to finish my my bachelor's, and I couldn't believe how many classes had social justice shoved and forced into the curriculum. And I'm talking about chemistry and like, I mean,
right.
Math, sciences.
And the whole thing here is that, and we'll talk about this after the break briefly, because there's another story that I wanted to get to with you, and that is that the whole idea of gender neutrality and everything else is being shoved down America's throat and these kids' throat, frog-wa style. And this is now becoming more of the norm in corporations. And you see this in whether it's the tech titans or corporations or in Hollywood, whatever it may be. And these are the values that are essentially and ostensibly being passed down to our kids. And this is how they're being raised to think. And they are thinking this way. And so it's ultimately, the end game, the goal for these people is to control. It's all about the control. So I want to carry you through the break here, and we can talk about that issue as well. Brian Martinez, again, tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, I'm on Twitter at Doge, D-O-G-E, in charge, I-N-C-H-A-R-G-E. That's my Twitter account. You can also follow at Honey Badger Brigade on Twitter, and again on YouTube, it's Honey Badger Radio, all one word, or Badger Live Streams. Either one of those channels.
And you're out there in Chicago. You're right in the heartland, and I mean, you've got your thumb on the pulse of everything that is happening, and I want to talk with you about that after the break as well. We got Brian Martinez is joining us here in the third and final hour here at Real Side Radio. I'm Dave Sussman. We'll be back here after the break here. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Here's how you get him. He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way.
Feel the rhythm now.
And that is the Chicago way. We were just talking off doing the break about some of the series and such that everybody's been watching right now. And we got Brian Martinez over at Honey Badger Radio, and he is from Chicago. That is right. You know what movie that was? That sound clip was?
Yeah, that was The Untouchables.
Nice. Nicely done, good sir.
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic movie. Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, and you are living the Chicago way. I want to talk with you about what people are saying right now in Chicago with COVID-19 and such. But I wanted to follow on with you, Brian Martinez, of Honey Badger Radio, and everybody should go check out his site and his radio show that he does. It's long-form interviews, kind of like what Whiskey Politics does, and it's good stuff. But you also brought up another, example, if we will, of what the left are doing right now to try and take control of, especially of our kids and the whole idea of tolerance and everybody. Okay, so you've got this thing. I'm from London originally, don't have much of an accent unless I drink my whiskey, and you've got this article that talks about London Fashion Week to go gender neutral. What the heck is going on? Tell me about this, Brian.
Yeah, right. So this came from CNN. So again, mainstream news talking about this. And for 12 months, so we're talking a full year, London Fashion Week is going to be gender neutral as the British Fashion Council abandons binary shows starting this June. So this isn't really, how do I explain this? As in Honey Badger Radio, we talk a lot about gender. We're actually a men's rights group or men's issues group. We like to talk about the ways in which men are disadvantaged, ignored, discarded, and even demonized in our popular culture, in education, by the family courts, and so on. It's just a litany of issues that men face. And one of the things that we notice that's also happening is there is this desire from the left, and specifically from the intersectional feminist camp, to actually erase gender completely. So they're blurring the lines between male and female to the point where the goal is to make it indistinguishable, to make men and women interchangeable, kind of like Mao's China. And I know that might sound hyperbolic, but it's absolutely true. I don't know if you know that Mao, he actually had men and women wear uniforms that were absolutely gender neutral, so you couldn't tell them apart, because he saw them as essentially equally disposable tools, utilities for Maoist China. And that's kind of what's happening here. And I know that doesn't sound like it lines up exactly right, but let me tell you, this isn't about people who are homosexual, bisexual, or transgender. It's not about that. It's about erasing gender itself, so that even people who have alternative sexual preferences, or even like gender dysphoria, they will be erased. This is basically about making no real difference between men and women. And so that's what this fashion show is about.
So let's delve into this a little bit deeper, because I think you and I both, and most people listening to this, don't have any ill will to anybody. You know, Martin Luther King, treat a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin, or I don't care what your sexuality is. You know, I know
Right.
good people are gay. I know transsexuals that are gay. Good people, and so on. So this isn't about that. Okay.
No.
But they're using that as a cudgel to say that if you are against this, then you are what? You're transphobic, you're homophobic.
They use the transphobic allegation as a kind of weapon against people who don't like. If you're a man and you're comfortable in your skin as a man, even if you are homosexual, because I've at the conferences that we hold, I've met plenty of bisexual and homosexual men, but they're still masculine, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like they wear, they work with out in the woods, and they do like manly stuff. They just happen to not be into women, or maybe only, maybe they're a little bit of both, whatever. So this isn't about sexual orientation. And this is about gender erasure. This is basically about minimizing or weakening or erasing gender, specifically, though, masculinity, because they despise masculinity. And the reason I can go into briefly, the left doesn't like hierarchies, right? It doesn't like the idea that there are some people who are better at some things than other people. So it needs to erase or flatten as many hierarchies, or as many naturally occurring hierarchies as possible, because they're so obsessed with equality. And equality means that you got to tear people down to everyone else's level, right? So masculinity, testosterone, is sort of fueled by competitiveness, which means it typically ends in hierarchies for men. And men generally are okay with that. Like if you're on a basketball team and there's a guy who plays better than you, and he's like a really great power forward or whatever, if you're a part of the same team, you don't really care that guy's better than you. Actually, you use it to make yourself better, right? Mm-hmm. It's like how we grow as men. Testosterone does that. It's how come we were able to, take the beaches at Normandy. It's how come we were able to do all of the incredible things that men have done all throughout history. Testosterone is responsible. Do you know that our testosterone levels are lower now than they ever have been in history?
I did see that, and a lot of that is to do with pollution and other stuff, but I'm going to say that a lot of it has to do with soy. And speaking of testosterone, your city is full of testosterone. I mean, there's a great documentary out right now regarding Chicago Bulls and everything that happened in the 1990s, Michael Jordan and everything else. Talk to me about the feeling right now about what is happening in the city of Chicago and the COVID-19 crisis, the economy, and what we're seeing happening as a result of all of this.
Well, what I'm seeing in Chicago, I think, is something that is echoed in a lot of the major cities, and that is the government is really trying to crack down and control people's lives. Like they're passing laws. They're telling us that there are cops out there ready to give out tickets if you're not social distancing. If you leave the house, you have to go, just to shop for food or whatever the essentials are. They've even told, and this is all Lori Lightfoot and the governor, Pritzker.
Yeah.
They've even told the
Lori Lightfoot's the mayor of Chicago.
Yes, elected basically because she was a black lesbian woman. So basically a lesbian female of color. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that that's literally what she was running on, and that's how come she beat Rahm Emanuel. But anyway,
right.
She's not a really great mayor. Nobody seems to be very excited about her. Despite all of this, so there's all these authoritarian measures put in place. Average Chicagoans, Chicago citizens, they are not happy about this. They want to go back to work. There are small business owners that are getting absolutely reamed by this situation. They're having difficulty keeping the lights on. They gotta let their employees go. The small businesses are suffering a lot, and they're very unhappy. And on top of that, I don't know if you know about this, but do you know that Lori Lightfoot, everybody knows about this, which is kind of great. She was telling the city that places like hairstylists and tattoo artists and barbershops and such, they're all non-essential, so they can't be open.
Right.
But she went and got her hair done by a professional stylist before the very next day. And it was reported and everything. And she said, as her defense, because people were like, well, what the heck is this? We want to open our businesses. There's plenty of, stylists and stuff that they need the money.
Yeah,
they need to get back to work. And she was like, well, I need to look good for the camera. So this is like
not
essential.
good for thee, but good for me.
Exactly,
and you see this all over the country. You see this with the mayor of New York going to the gym, his Anna, and all. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Coming into our last minute here, tell everybody a little bit more about your show. It's a great show, Honey Badger Radio, and what you guys are trying to do there, and where people can find you as well.
Thank you. Again, my name is Brian Martinez. I'm one of a team of people that work at Honey Badger Radio. It's a YouTube channel, but there's also a podcast on iTunes. We have a website. It's at honeybadgerbrigade.com. And what we talk about mainly is we talk about everything from a male issues focused perspective. So what we're trying to do, what our goal is to get people to look at situations that typically make people side with or only observe the way in which women are impacted, and try to broaden that to include men, because you'll find that they are often erased, and so most of the time, and I think that is absolutely crucial. It's basically, if you want real gender equality, you cannot look at one side of the balance beam. You have to look at both and weigh them. So that's what we do. It's at Honey Badger Radio or Badger Live Streams, and my Twitter is at Doge in Charge.
Well, we've got the links up here for you, Brian. Thank you so much for taking the time, and greatly appreciate it. Staying up late there in the city of Chicago, the Untouchables, and we'll have you back on again down the road real soon. Brian Martinez, thanks everybody, and we'll be back here. Final segment coming up here. Dave Sussman here, Real Side Radio. Don't go away, folks.